After 20 hours of agonizing labor, drenched in sweat and barely clinging to consciousness, I thought the worst was behind me. The sterile white walls of the delivery room blurred in and out of focus as I finally heard my baby's first cry. And for a moment, everything else disappeared. The pain, the exhaustion, the betrayal I hadn't yet realized, all faded. She was here. My daughter. Ours. But before I could even hold her for more than a breath, Brandon snatched the clipboard from the nurse's hands. His face was calm, too calm. I watched through a fog as he took the pen, flipped to the birth certificate form, and began writing. I assumed he was just confirming the details we'd already agreed on. We had picked her name together months ago, Lila Rose. Sweet, simple, something we both loved. Except he didn't write Lila. Her name is Eleanor, he said flatly, not looking at me. My heart stalled. What? He turned his head slowly, like he was doing me the courtesy of acknowledgement. After my mother. She deserves it. I blinked. Surely he was joking. We had agreed. We talked about it, dreamed about it. But he wasn't laughing. Instead, he gave me a look so smug it made my stomach churn. You don't get a say, he added. I was too weak to sit up, too drained to shout, so I whispered, Brandon, no. We already, his smirk widened. That was before. I changed my mind. This is what's happening. The room felt colder. The nurse, an older woman with silver hair and eyes sharp as ice, paused. Her name tag said Diane. She looked from me to Brandon, and then back to me. Slowly, she stepped closer and leaned toward my ear. Want me to tell him the truth, she whispered. I froze. What truth? I mouthed. She didn't answer. She just gave me a look. That kind of look older women give when they've seen too much and aren't afraid to burn it all down. Brandon was too focused on the form to notice the sudden shift in the room's energy. He kept scribbling confidently like nothing in the world could stop him. But something was wrong. Very wrong. My body was still aching, but a new kind of pain started brewing. Deeper, colder, sharper than the contractions that had just nearly broken me. It was the pain of realization. The pain of betrayal taking form right in front of me. And I hadn't even begun to understand just how deep it would go. If you'd met Brandon Harper 5 years ago, you would have liked him. Everyone did. He was charming in that clean-cut, dependable way. Well-spoken, ambitious. Always the guy who brought extra napkins to a picnic. And when we first started dating, I thought I'd won the lottery. A man who listened, who opened doors, who remembered the names of my coworkers. It felt real, steady, safe. And yet, looking at him in that moment, standing in a hospital room, stealing the name of our daughter right out from under me, I saw something I should have noticed long ago. Control. It was always there, but he wrapped it in sweetness. In, I was just trying to help. And don't stress about it, I've already taken care of it. He didn't raise his voice, didn't slam doors. He didn't have to. He just quietly moved the pieces around until I didn't realize I was standing on someone else's board. And his mother, Eleanor Harper, was the one setting the rules. From the day I met her, I knew she didn't like me. I wasn't what she envisioned for her golden boy. I was a schoolteacher from the east side of Portland, raised by a single mom with a car that rattled every time it stopped at a red light. Meanwhile, Eleanor owned a high-end salon in Lake Oswego, drove a Lexus, and made sure everyone knew her son had gone to Stanford, even though he dropped out after 2 years and transferred to a state school. At first, it was small. Little comments about my wardrobe. You're so brave to wear flats with a formal dress, dear. Passive digs about my family. You must be very self-reliant, considering. Then came the deeper cuts. She wanted to vet our wedding guest list. Criticized the ring Brandon picked out because she wasn't consulted. And when we bought our starter home, she walked in, wrinkled her nose at the carpet, and muttered, "Didn't anyone teach you about resale value?" Brandon always brushed it off. That's just how she is. She means well. Don't take it personally. But it was personal. Every jab, every stare, every attempt to rewrite my place in his life. She wasn't trying to be part of our family. She was trying to remind me I didn't belong. And I kept telling myself things would change when I got pregnant, that the baby would soften her, that she'd finally see me as family too. But I was wrong. So wrong. Because the second Eleanor found out I was pregnant, she didn't soften. She sharpened. Suddenly, she had opinions about everything. What I ate, how much I exercised, which OBGYN I should use. She even showed up to my 20-week ultrasound uninvited. And Brandon let her sit next to him, holding his hand while I lay there on the table. That should have been the moment I realized. But I didn't. Not yet. By the time I was 6 months pregnant, I had stopped calling it our pregnancy. It was hers. Eleanor had hijacked everything, from the nursery colors to the brand of prenatal vitamins I took. She handed me laminated meal plans and herbal supplements, like I was one of her spa clients, not her daughter-in-law. And Brandon? He just nodded along. Even when I told him she was stressing me out, even when I broke down crying at night because I felt like a surrogate in my own home. She just wants what's best for the baby, he said. You're too emotional lately. No, I was exhausted. I was growing a human and slowly unraveling under the weight of someone else's expectations. The breaking point came on a quiet Sunday afternoon. We were in the middle of folding baby clothes, tiny onesies that I had picked out, the kind with soft animals and neutral colors I loved. Eleanor was there, of course, sitting on our couch like it belonged to her. She picked up one of the outfits and wrinkled her nose. This looks cheap, she said. I didn't respond. I was too tired, but she wasn't done. I just hope the baby looks like Brandon's side of the family. Your features wouldn't suit a girl. It took me a second to register what she said. Then I looked up. She was staring directly at me, unblinking, with a smile so smug it made my skin crawl. Brandon was sitting right next to her, and he said nothing, not even a flinch. No awkward laugh. No, Mom, that's not appropriate. Nothing. I excused myself and went to the bathroom. I remember staring at myself in the mirror, wondering when I had disappeared. I was still Natalie Harper, still the same woman who loved to teach second graders, who once laughed until she cried watching reruns of The Office, who dreamed of holding her daughter and telling her stories of strength, not silence. But I didn't feel like that woman anymore. I felt like a passenger. And every time Eleanor spoke, every time Brandon stayed quiet, I sank deeper into that silence. So when the due date came and I felt the first contraction, I told myself, this is it. This is the moment it all changes. A new beginning, a new life. But the moment that baby arrived, I realized something worse than all the months of manipulation and passive cruelty. I wasn't just losing my voice. I was losing my child, and I hadn't even left the hospital bed yet. Labor was brutal. I'd heard stories, watched the birth videos in our prenatal classes, read all the articles about breathing techniques and visualization. None of it prepared me. Nothing could. My body felt like it was being cracked open, like every cell inside me was breaking apart to make room for someone else. And the worst part wasn't the pain. It was the way Brandon looked at me through it, detached, irritated. He scrolled on his phone while I screamed through contractions. He took 2 separate calls from his mother while I was begging the nurse for ice chips. At one point, he even left the room to get himself coffee, while I was clutching the bed rails, sobbing, trying not to pass out from the pain. I don't remember the moment my daughter entered the world. That's the part that still breaks me. I was too far gone, numb, exhausted. Tears dried on my cheeks. They placed her in my arms, and I looked at her like I was underwater, seeing beauty through thick glass. And then she was gone. Brandon took her. Well, not her exactly. He took the clipboard from the nurse's hands, plucked the pen from her pocket like he had every right to it, and said, "I'll handle this." At first, I thought he was just filling in routine information. Wait, time of birth, parents' names. We'd talked about it all. We'd picked her name together, Lila Rose Harper. It was even written on the little wooden sign I had packed in the hospital bag. But then I heard it. Brandon, speaking softly as he wrote. Her name is Eleanor. Eleanor Marie Harper. I thought I misheard. Or hallucinated. Brandon, I croaked, voice like paper. What? He didn't even turn around. She's named after my mother. No, I said, barely audible. We agreed, Lila. We chose. He turned then, gave me the smallest smile. You're still out of it. Just rest. You don't get to do that, I whispered. That's when he said it. You don't get a say. Those 5 words felt sharper than the labor itself. I opened my mouth to scream, but no sound came. Only air. Only helplessness. Then the nurse, Diane, stepped closer. Her face unreadable. Her voice low. Do you want me to tell him the truth? I blinked, confused. What truth? I mouthed. She didn't answer, but her eyes, God, her eyes said everything. They held fury, fire, and something else. A secret. Brandon didn't see it. He was still smug, still scribbling, still pretending he was the hero in a story only he understood. But I saw it, and in that moment I knew. This wasn't just about a name. Something far bigger was about to come crashing down. My whole body was trembling, but not from labor anymore. It was something colder now, something bone deep. I looked up at Diane, barely able to lift my head, and whispered, What do you mean? Her eyes flicked toward Brandon, then back to me. Not here, she murmured. But trust me, you need to know. Brandon was still scribbling away on the paperwork, like he was signing a deal, not rewriting our daughter's future without me in it. I turned my head slowly, every muscle in my body screaming in protest. My voice was hoarse but steady. Brandon, put the pen down. He didn't even flinch. I'm taking care of it. You just gave birth. You're not thinking clearly. I clenched my jaw. We agreed on a name. I changed my mind. No, we don't get to change our mind unilaterally. He turned to me then, and the look in his eyes chilled me. You should be grateful I'm even letting you put your last name on the certificate. There it was. Not frustration. Not impatience. Control. The room spun slightly as Diane took a sharp step forward and, without hesitation, ripped the clipboard from his hands. You will not speak to her like that, she snapped. Brandon jerked back, stunned. What the hell? Diane didn't even blink. She flipped the documents over and looked straight at him. You're lucky she doesn't know the whole story yet, she said coolly. A pause. My heart stuttered. What are you talking about? She's bluffing, Brandon said quickly, just trying to stir things up. I don't bluff, Diane shot back. You think you're the first one to try this? I've worked here for 20 years. I've seen men like you before. Brandon's shoulders stiffened. Then Diane leaned down to me, lowering her voice. Check the insurance records, she whispered. My stomach turned. Brandon had been handling all the paperwork during my pregnancy. I was teaching full-time on my feet all day. He said he'd deal with the insurance, the hospital forms, the parental declarations. I trusted him. I never even thought to look. Brandon, I rasped. What did you do? He didn't answer, but his hands curled into fists. There was sweat forming at his temples now. Diane took a step toward the computer near the monitors. Do you want me to pull them? Yes, I said without thinking. Brandon barked a bitter laugh. This is ridiculous. You're just hormonal. No, I said. I'm awake now. Diane nodded. Give me 5 minutes. She disappeared into the hallway. I turned to Brandon, staring at him like he was a stranger. You changed my records, didn't you? He looked away, and in that silence I had my answer. I reached for my phone with trembling hands. My fingers were still swollen from the IVs, but I managed to swipe through the lock screen. I needed to call Chloe. She was the only one I could trust, the only person who'd warn me, long before I ever wanted to hear it. But before I could even press her name, Brandon lunged forward and snatched the phone from my hands. You're not doing this, he said through clenched teeth. Diane reappeared just in time. She stepped between us, her voice sharp as glass. Give it back to her. Now. He hesitated. For a moment, I saw something in his eyes, panic. Then he tossed the phone onto the bed, the way a child might throw a toy they didn't want to share. You're making a mistake, he muttered. I didn't even look at him. I dialed Chloe. She answered on the second ring. Hey, how's the baby? How are you feeling? My mouth opened, but nothing came out. My throat tightened like it had sealed shut. Diane took the phone gently from my hand and spoke. Hi, this is Nurse Diane from St. Helena Medical Center. Your sister needs you here immediately. Chloe didn't ask questions. She just said, I'm on my way. Brandon scoffed, a bitter sound that barely disguised his dread. So now you're calling your sister? Great. She's never liked me. I turned my head toward him. Maybe that's because she saw through you before I did. His face darkened. Before either of us could say more, Diane returned with a slim file folder in her hands. She handed it to me carefully like it might explode. I opened it. There, in black ink, were the insurance records Brandon had submitted. His name, and only his name, was listed under legal parent. Not a trace of mine. My body went cold. You were going to take her from me, I whispered. Brandon didn't deny it. He didn't need to. Diane's voice was tight. You're lucky we caught this. I've seen women lose custody because of documents like this. And it's legal unless someone flags it, which I just did. He stood up suddenly. You're overreacting. I shook my head. I'm done reacting. Now I act. He laughed, a short, ugly sound. You just had a baby. Where do you think you're going to go? Diane placed a firm hand on my shoulder. She won't be alone. That's when the door opened and Chloe stepped in. She didn't even pause at the threshold. She saw my face, the file in my hands, and the expression on Brandon's. And she knew. Chloe didn't say a word. She walked straight to Brandon, snatched the phone from his back pocket like she had every right to it, and began scrolling. He tried to stop her, but she held up a single finger, the same way she used to when we were kids, and I'd start whining in the back seat. That finger meant shut up. It always had. She found what she was looking for almost immediately. Her eyes narrowed. Her face turned red. And then she turned the screen toward me. A thread of messages filled the display. Dozens of them. Brandon and a woman named Samantha. I stared at the words as if they might rearrange themselves into something less cruel. I can't wait until the baby's here. Once she's born, we'll finally be free. She won't have anything left. She'll be stuck. Trust me, she doesn't suspect a thing. It wasn't just an affair. It was a plan. Brandon hadn't just betrayed me. He had intended to trap me, to isolate me, to strip away my child, my autonomy, my entire identity, all so he could walk away clean with someone else. Chloe's voice shook. Are you kidding me? Brandon paled. It's not what it looks like. Oh, she snapped. Because it looks like you and Mommy Dearest were planning to erase my sister from her own life. Just then, the door swung open, and Eleanor Harper walked in like she owned the hospital. She looked from the shredded insurance file in my hands, to the phone in Chloe's grip, and finally to Brandon's face. Her lips curled. Well, she said coolly, I suppose there's no point in pretending now. Chloe let out a disbelieving laugh. You're not even going to deny it. Eleanor shrugged. Sweetheart, this is what's best for the baby. I tightened my hold on my daughter. The best thing for my baby, I said, is never seeing your face again. Eleanor stepped forward, her voice eerily calm. Let's be realistic. Brandon has the resources, the legal advantage. You're exhausted, unstable. I'm not unstable, I said, standing as much as my body allowed. I'm aware, and that's what makes me dangerous. She turned to Brandon. Handle this. And for the first time, he didn't move. He looked at me, then at Chloe, then back at his mother. I can't, he said, voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor stiffened. Excuse me. I didn't think it would go this far, he muttered. She hissed. After everything I've done for you? Brandon flinched. And that was the moment I knew. Not that he had changed. Not that he regretted anything. But that the spell was breaking. He was no longer sure whose voice he should obey. And for the first time, it wasn't hers. I looked Brandon dead in the eye. "If you go through with this," I said, my voice steady, "I will take you to court. I will expose everything. The insurance fraud, the fake paperwork, the affair, the attempt to steal our child." He didn't blink, but he wasn't smirking anymore either. "And I won't stop until you're a footnote in her life," I added. "A story I tell her about what not to accept from a man." Chloe folded her arms, glaring at him like she was daring him to try something. Eleanor stepped forward. Fury painted across her face. "You're bluffing. You don't have the means. We have lawyers." I met her gaze and didn't look away. "Then I guess we'll find out who bleeds first." The room went still. Then, finally, Brandon cracked. He turned to his mother and said, "Mom, I can't do this." She recoiled. "What?" I didn't want it to get this far," he mumbled. "She wasn't supposed to find out not like this." Eleanor's voice rose. "So you're going to throw everything away? After all we planned?" Brandon looked at the baby in my arms, and then he stepped back. He didn't apologize. He didn't beg. He just backed away like a man, realizing the walls he helped build were now closing in on him. Diane entered again with a hospital administrator. Her presence alone brought a new kind of gravity to the room. Without a word, she handed me a set of revised forms, fresh, untainted, with my name listed clearly under Mother. "Legal. Secure. Sign here," she said gently. I did. Brandon didn't argue. He just stood there, deflated. Eleanor didn't leave quietly. She made one last attempt, stepping toward me with that fake sweetness layered over venom. "Natalie, don't let bitterness cloud your judgment. You need stability, and so does the child." "She'll have it," I said, voice sharp. "Just not from people like you." Chloe walked over and opened the door. "Get out." Eleanor stood there, lips tight, eyes blazing. Then she turned to Brandon and hissed, "I hope you're happy." He didn't answer. She stormed out, and this time he didn't follow her. I sat back down slowly, my legs trembling. Diane placed a warm blanket over my shoulders and said softly, "It's over now." But I knew better. It wasn't over. Not yet. It was only just beginning. Because now I had power, and I was finally ready to use it. The hospital released me 3 days later. Brandon didn't come with me. He didn't offer to help carry the bags. He didn't even try to hold the baby again. He just stood by the exit, staring at the floor as Chloe packed up our things. And I, holding my daughter in my arms, breathing her in like she was the only clean thing in a toxic world, I walked past him without saying a word. He didn't follow. That night, Chloe stayed with me in the apartment. She sat on the edge of the bed while I fed my daughter and said, "We'll get through this, one step at a time." 2 days later, I filed for divorce. The paperwork was clean, straightforward. With the nurse's documentation and the administrator's signature, the hospital records showed a legal trail that supported everything. The altered insurance, the forged parental designation, even Diane's written report. Our lawyer cousin, Ethan, called it an airtight case of attempted custodial interference. In short, Brandon didn't stand a chance. He didn't fight it. Not once. I think he knew. Deep down. Maybe he always knew what he was doing was wrong. But he still did it. That's what stuck with me. As for Eleanor, she made one more pathetic attempt to regain control. She showed up at my apartment unannounced the following week, carrying a gift basket and a letter she called an invitation to heal. Chloe opened the door and didn't even let her get a word in. She called the cops. That was the last time I saw her. Samantha, the woman Brandon had been planning his future with, ghosted him the moment she realized he had nothing left. She blocked him on everything. Chloe found his Reddit history one night, and we laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks. He'd posted in some thread asking how to regain custody after a hostile divorce, and got torn apart in the comments. Eleanor stopped calling. The salon she owned started bleeding clients after Chloe left a review detailing her attempt to steal a newborn through insurance fraud. Nothing slanderous, just facts. The screenshots did the rest. Brandon moved out of the condo downtown and into a cheap rental on the east side. Alone. No child. No mother. No mistress. Just silence. And me? I finally slept. Not deeply. Not for long. But enough. Enough to feel like I wasn't drowning anymore. Because for the first time in months, I wasn't waking up inside someone else's narrative. I was writing my own. It took weeks for the numbness to wear off. I'd rock my daughter to sleep at night and whisper stories into the quiet, trying to convince myself it was really over, that he couldn't come back, that she couldn't find another way in, that I was safe, that she was safe, and little by little, the fear started to fade. I didn't feel like I'd won anything, not in the way people talk about revenge. There was no parade, no final courtroom clap, no dramatic confession, just paperwork, silence, a new crib in a small, sunlit room. But sometimes survival is the victory. Brandon had wanted control. Eleanor had wanted legacy. Samantha had wanted convenience. They all treated my child, our child, like a trophy in some warped family game. But she's not a prize. She's not a name to be branded with someone else's expectations. She's mine. And I'll spend every day reminding her that her story didn't begin with surrender. It began with resistance. I tell her the truth, but gently. I tell her she was born on a rainy Tuesday morning, just before Thanksgiving, in a city that smelled like wet leaves and hospital sanitizer. I tell her her first cry was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I tell her that she was wanted, fought for, protected before she even knew how fragile this world could be. And most of all, I tell her that her name is Lila Rose, not because it was the prettiest, but because it was ours. Not mine, not Brandon's, ours. The name we chose before everything twisted, before the mask slipped, before trust broke. She'll grow up never knowing the version of me who kept quiet to keep the peace. That version died in a hospital bed the moment Brandon said, "You don't get a say." And something stronger took her place. Stronger doesn't mean unbreakable. It just means I chose myself. Chose her. I still carry scars. Not the ones from surgery or labor, but the invisible kind. The ones that sit between your ribs and tighten every time someone calls you emotional for standing your ground. But they don't own me anymore. Neither does he. Neither does she. Because when Eleanor tried to rewrite my daughter's life before it even began, when Brandon tried to delete me from the story entirely, they didn't expect me to fight back. They thought I'd beg, plead, break. Instead, I built something no one could touch. A life without them. A life where I get to choose. A life where I get to say, I don't need revenge. I have freedom. And that's more than they'll ever have.